Hey, this is Mike, Sador 42 Vinyl. We're going to do another video. I'm going to do another video with my friend Roger since the Iron Maiden video did very well over 500 views. I know everybody doesn't watch the whole thing, but I know some friends of mine have watched it. They've enjoyed watching it, so it's pretty cool. And of course, I think right off the top, we got to say we did talk about Iron Maiden, and not even a couple weeks after that, we got the news about Paul Di'Anno passing away, which is incredibly unfortunate. He had a lot of health problems, so unfortunate that he passed away, of course. But we did get to talk about Killers, so that was
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm glad we did. That was actually
Yeah,
pretty cool that we did that before that.
it definitely worked out that we got that in. Okay, so this video is going to be about this one isn't going to be favorites. This one's going to be more of kind of like our metal journey, like where we kind of started, and it's going to be five like significant albums that kind of inspired us to keep buying metal, and getting into it. I'm going to have Roger start with his first album, and not all these albums aren't going to be like pure metal albums. Some of them are just going to be like, very beginnings of what we were listening to, probably just as we were teenagers or even before we were teenagers, probably in junior high or even I remember hearing like Twisted Sister and stuff in sixth grade, right before I got out of sixth grade. So I remember hearing heavy music back then. But the albums that we're going to talk about are going to be ones where we actually started buying stuff and really getting interested and just kind of like significant milestones. And I'll have Roger start with his first album pick.
Yeah, and I would first say that like this isn't like the top five most significant or anything like that. Like
Right.
this might be five fun ones. Like I mean, they're not to take anything away from it. And but I don't know if these are the top five, but these are five really cool records that I'd like to talk about that did have a significant portion. I'm gonna go way back because I was fortunate that I had an aunt that was about 10 years older than me, and so when I was a little kid, she was a teenager and she was into like rock and hard rock, and this album came out in 1981. This is Allied Forces by Triumph. I'm amazed at what condition this record is because this is an OG record. This is the record that I bought in mid 80s. I used to use it as an easel when I was in elementary school. If you look hard in the right light, you can probably see homework tracings on it. So but this is a great record. Why it's significant to me is because it's probably like 8 years old and I heard it. It just really resonated with me. I think one of the biggest, hits on the song Magic Power was probably the first song I heard. And the way that Magic Power was, it seemed kind of long. It seemed I didn't know the word proggy, but maybe it was a little proggy at the time. It was very verbose and like I was immediately drawn to it. What I remember specifically about this record is like it was the first time I can ever remember that I wanted to learn the lyrics to a song and I wanted to memorize the lyrics to a song. And my aunt had this record, she lent it to me. I had it for a while. I probably recorded it onto cassette at some point, but it was so good. I just liked it so much that I got my own copy of it. And this is a really cool record. I forgot that that Rick Emmett didn't sing all the songs on it. Gilmore, the drummer, sang a couple songs on this album. And before this one was Progressions of Power, which was cool. After this one was Never Surrender, which was really good. I think most people think of Allied Forces as their signature record, though, and I would
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And here's the thing about what I was when I was listening to it today. This album is all over the map. Like I think everybody knows Magic Power and Fight the Good Fight, and they
Yeah.
have a very similar vibe. They only wrote a few songs like that. The
Yeah.
the rest of their albums do not sound like that at all.
No, they're like hard
Like
rock, and
they
like
are.
a lot of them, those two songs in particular, they're hits. They had that melody for the chorus, but they were progressive in I think the arrangements of the song. But a lot of their other stuff are just straight up hard rock.
Yeah, what's funny was when I was listening to it today, I was surprised how like half the album was giving me like a strong Foghat vibe. I think I had a misconception, my memory of this record more until I listened to it today because it's definitely a significant record for me. Not only like Magic Power, but like Allied Forces is a rocker. Man, that song rips, and that's one of
Yeah.
the two songs that the other dude, the drummer Gilmore, sings. It is a heavy metal song, Allied Forces. Like that is not
Yeah.
rock. That's a metal song. It
Yeah.
rips.
I had similar experience where, I had a neighbor across the street who was a teenager, maybe a little bit older, but he was older than me, and he let me borrow some records. He let me borrow Def Leppard Pyromania was a significant one, and AC/DC Back in Black. And what was interesting just about music in general back then, us listening to stuff, I know we probably listened to the radio a lot, so we heard a lot of stuff
Mhm.
on the radio. Unless they announced the band and we could associate that, I never knew what bands were singing what songs, so when he lent me that album and I'm hearing, like Back in in Black and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, now I have a band to associate with these songs. So I always thought that was interesting.
And going back, I think like so I'll finish this up, Sam. I think the song I want to probably play out of this, I think I want to play Allied Forces because the Allied Forces just is a ripping ass hard rock song, and it's not maybe one of the ones that you think of with this album as much. And props to like the hits Magic Power and Fight the Good Fight and Say Goodbye. I think those are great songs, and I generally prefer Rick Emmett songs with this band, but I think I want to say Allied Forces is the song we're gonna play.
All right,
All right,
so
what you got?
I'm going to start with, I think this particular album is an album that is a lot of people's first album from the 80s, especially the early 80s. I know our friend Brian in particular, I believe that he said he bought this album. And this was before we all knew each other too. So we were all just independently discovering this stuff. But I had a friend, my mom had a friend who had a kid who was into music, and he had two albums from this band and played both of them for me. And I immediately was like attracted to the music. I was like, this is amazing. My first grass cutting money that I made, I remember going to Kmart and buying this on cassette. And of course, that Shot at the Devil from Motley Crue.
All right.
Motley Crue is my first, band that I discovered that I would say is, my band or a band that, yeah, exactly. And it's really interesting to go back and listen to people talk about Motley Crue and how significant they were in the scene, because this is real early. This is before, hair metal became hair metal. And Motley Crue was, they were an odd odd band at the time because they weren't like Quiet Riot, they weren't like Twisted Sister, they weren't like some of the other heavier bands that were becoming popular. They were way heavier. And I believe, we heard Twisted Sister and stuff like that on the radio. I never heard Motley Crue on the radio in
No,
Detroit.
no.
So, this was definitely underground metal I had discovered, and, definitely love this album. Obviously, these first two albums, Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, very significant in my metal journey. Love these albums.
I'll keep my comments brief as I can. As you know, like I probably could have put Too Fast for Love on this list of mine, but knowing that you were going to put this on there, I didn't want to get too redundant. I think we could make a whole video itself on Too Fast for Love. I could at least. I could talk for an hour about it. I think it's far superior to this album personally. I listened to this album again today. It's not that I haven't heard this like a gazillion times. Well, first I will say I agree with you. I was in like sixth grade, just starting, so it was like 1985, and I was walking to elementary school, and I got there way too early, and there was this kid I didn't know with a boombox playing "Shout at the Devil." So this was like it, and I was like, "What is this music?" Like it hit me really hard. I think "Too Young" is probably my favorite song on that record, to be honest with you. I was listening to it today, and I was like, I really like it. My problem with this album, I really hate the production on it, and part of it is because how much I love the production on Too Fast for Love. I think it's so raw and it's mixed so perfectly. And I think Mick is the star of Too Fast for Love. I think that's Mick's album. Like I've always thought that. And this album, he's so buried and the guitar is so muddy. And this album is all drums and vocals. And it just kind of drives me nuts a little bit how this album sounds. That's my biggest problem with this album. I'm interested to hear what song you want to play off this, because this is cool.
So I'll pick one, and it'll be a surprise for you when you watch.
All right, fair enough. So I'm going to be talking about an Ozzy album here. We're not talking about Tribute. Maybe we should, but that may be a different list we can talk about here. But I remember hearing Tribute because it was the new release. and one of the few albums that like I was at the record store the day it came out and got it the day it came out. I was super excited about it, and I didn't know any of this. That was the funny thing is I didn't even know what I was buying. Like I just was like I heard an interview on WRIF with Ozzy, and he was promoting the new album. I didn't know what I was buying, and I bought Tribute, and those were all new songs to me. So that, of course, led me to get the earlier albums. And it's an obvious album, but I'm going to talk about Blizzard of Us. And I would say we could talk about either this or Diary. I think they're both good. This was the one that, for whatever reason, after I'd heard Tribute, and then I was like, I need to hear these tapes, and went and bought, this was the one I bought. Just listen to this on my Walkman over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's so great. And I think this all comes down to like I could go on and talk about what that I don't think Ozzy is particularly good at almost anything he's ever done, but yet he's just this weird enigma in people our age's lives that we just accept that he is this thing. I would argue that the first two Ozzy solo albums are probably my favorite things he recorded more than the albums he did with Sabbath. And I love those albums, and I think that's, really because really the star of this album was, this guy right here,
Yeah.
This was all about Randy. And that album Tribute, that live album, not only like was a live album, but it was telling us this is why you should like this.
Exactly.
Because this guy was so good that like we're gonna make an album dedicated to him, 5 years after he died. And for us, at our age, I didn't know who he was. And he just is the star of the show. Like I'm not a musician. I'm not gonna try to talk about best, but my favorite guitar players of all time, Randy's on the list, and I think, he might be the best, but he's definitely in the top 3, top 5 for sure. Like Randy is awesome, and everything about this album is so good. There's not a bad song on this record. Like there really isn't.
I agree.
And maybe we've all heard Crazy Train too many times. We probably have. It's probably skippable at this time. I've sang Mr. Crowley like karaoke so many times I couldn't even begin to tell you. Like even side 2, which is maybe after Mr. Crowley, No Bone Movies, Revelations, Steal Away. They're so good. I want to give props to Bob Daisley. I think, I mentioned him earlier. Other than Randy, Bob Daisley wrote an amazing record. The stories you hear about Ozzy's contributions are kind of hilarious. And it's just significant for me, I would say, on this theory, is that it was one of those first albums that like I learned every note of it. I knew every song and every note. I think before then maybe there was, in my life, there were throwaway songs on albums and then there were no throwaway songs in this album for me. I thought this album was just perfect.
I've heard a lot of stories from that, that Ozzy was not, especially in the Randy Rhoads days where he didn't contribute a ton. Other people say, he really did come up with a lot of good melodies and, they use that stuff. So it's really hard to say when you have when everybody has a different story and there's not a lot of consistency coming out of it. It's interesting because, Ozzy, for me, I only knew Ozzy from listening to the radio. I never bought an Ozzy record. I don't even think I put together for whatever reason, I never put together Ozzy and the songs I was hearing on the radio, that they were Ozzy Osbourne songs. But when I finally did hear, like I Don't Know and Crazy Train and stuff like that, and it hit, I was like, holy shit, this guy is, created all this music, so yeah, then when it all came together and you knew that almost all those songs were on like those 2 albums, it was pretty amazing. I never actually bought those records when I was younger at all. I didn't get into them or buy them until later on. So yeah, Ozzy for me was just not a huge influence into metal, and I heard Ozzy songs, but like I said, I just didn't buy an Ozzy record. Having Ozzy just come from that pedigree of being in Black Sabbath, that brought a lot of cachet for him. Like you said, he got really lucky and got involved with a lot of great songwriters, a lot of great musicians who were just like, he always surrounded himself with talent.
Yep.
And yeah, he probably rode a lot of that. But like I said, we're not in the rooms. We don't know. So, but you're right. A lot of the consistent stories that come out of those days is Ozzy was just drunk 90% of the time.
There were some really funny stories even about Ozzy's contribute to the Jake Ely albums and how non-existent they were. All those are in the Bob Daisley book, and there were really some really funny stories.
All right, so my next record is we're trying to figure out timelines and when things happen and stuff like that. But my memory and the way that I've told this story or understood it from myself for years and years and years is that I spent a night, a weekend at my cousin's one time and just hanging out there, and they had cable. As I was going to bed, they gave me the remote and they're just like, yeah, watch whatever you want, until you fall asleep or whatever. And then all of a sudden I'm flipping channels, I hit MTV and maybe I'm watching some music, and all of a sudden it must have been midnight on a Saturday. And you hear the chugging, the riffing, the train crashing, all this black and white, and then Headbangers Ball starts popping up on the screen, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? What is this? And I'm already into Motley Crue. I'm buying some stuff. So, and then Adam Curry comes on and wearing a leather jacket with long hair. And I'm like, what is this? And he's inside this busted TV that looks like a background. I'm like, what is going on? And he introduces a band, he's like, oh, this is Headbangers Ball. We're going to play some heavy metal music, blah, blah, blah. And he says, we got a new video from Dokken and it's the Heaven Sent. And it must have been like the second or third single off the album. And I can't remember the order. Yeah, great album. I can't remember the order if I had already had this album from going to see, sneaking into and seeing Dream Warriors and knowing that Dokken sung the song and then figuring out somehow that it was on this album. I might have had it before I saw the video because somehow in my memory, I'm like, holy cow, they're playing a video from a band that I have an album for already. And this is crazy. And they played Heaven Sent. And I remember being like, wow, this is great. This was a band and an album that was very significant because it was one of the first things I ever seen on Headbangers Ball. And I loved the Dream Warrior song. I remember loving the movie. That was probably one of my favorite movie as a kid. I thought it was great. And hearing the album, this was definitely probably my first hair metal album. And it started that whole thing because I don't think I missed a Headbangers Ball after that day. Once I figured out it was on every Saturday night at midnight. And there's other albums in here that I'm going to talk about that I discovered on Headbangers Ball. And between us, once we started watching together and hanging out, we've discovered so much different music from there. Yeah, this was significant because of that. This album is great. I remember on the sticker, over 60 minutes of music was on the hype sticker. I thought that was amazing. I was like,
I'll get to that.
And that's probably the biggest problem with this album is that there's just too many songs. Not all of them are great. But when we bought albums as a kid, this was the only album we had maybe for a month or 2 months or even longer. So we would just listen to them over and over and over again. And these songs would just grow on us. So, I listened to them all. I know all the guitar riffs. I know all the solos. I know the vocals to the lyrics to nearly every song on here. Like side B was always weak, even as a kid. And that opening riff, Kiss of Death,
I think "Kiss of Death" is the best song on that. Other than Dream Warriors, I'll talk about Dream Warriors.
Regardless of how good or bad this album is, objectively, I love it, and it was one of the first videos I ever saw Headbangers Ball, and I watched it. Headbangers Ball, like I said, religiously after that.
I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 1 when it came out. I saw 2 when it came out. And I remember all that, I was reading Fangoria and shit and all the hype for 3 when it was come out. And I remember the world premiere video, and it was a band that I knew. To me, it was the greatest music video that ever had existed. When they world premiered Dream Warriors, it was like horror movies and heavy metal were coming together. And I was like 14 years old, wherever I was. And it was the greatest thing ever. And I saw that movie at the theater, and I like this record. I do. Not only I think there's about 2 or 3 too many songs on it. My problem is, and it's not only the too many songs, but like every song is 4 to 5 minutes, and man, so many of those songs need to be a tight 3 minutes. I feel like if this had a couple songs less, even the good songs on there, they just go on for like a minute too long. Like all of them do. They just like the end. They just kind of like they just repeat the same shit and fade out, and it's just like you could have just tightened the shit up. That's my problem with this record. But I'm not gonna slag it for the most part. I love Dokken. I mean, I don't even really. I mean, we've argued about what is and isn't hair metal, and sure, I'm gonna give it to you, but I don't even think of them that way. To me, I've just always thought Dokken as a sweet hard rock band.
The term hair metal is problematic for a lot of people. It's not
Yes.
for me. But saying that, overall, I think there's a lot of merit to that scene, and all of those bands, even the mediocre ones, that were just okay, contributed. Even whether Dokken is you put it in the hair metal category or not, I think it goes in there.
I think just
it's a
for
big
me,
umbrella.
I think I've kind of thought of the hair metal as more a pejorative over the years than you have. Like I feel like and that's fine. Like I feel like it's a term that I kind of just always cringed away from.
I definitely had a bigger heart, I guess, for all the stuff that was coming out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't judging a lot of it. I just liked what I liked. You know, if it was cool, I liked. But yeah, hair metal as a term, I think it's just convenient at this point, and you can use it as a pejorative, but just like anything, you know,
Sure.
it's how you talk about it and how you use it that
It's
matters.
funny, like years later, was like listening to Sirius XM radio all the time, and there was that like Hair Nations channel. And
Yeah.
at first, I was like, why in earth would I listen to that? And I turned it on, and it was funny because I just had this kind of moment of clarity where I was like, I know all these fucking songs, man. And some of them I still don't like, but that was
Yeah.
definitely maybe about 15 to 20 years ago, where there was a lot of bands that I realized from that genre that I was like, I love this band. And to wholly validate what you're saying here, one of those bands was Dokken.
And right now we have a block from one of the monsters. As I mentioned before, if you entered our Monster of Rock contest, you still could win a bunch of prizes, including George Lynch's very own ESP Kamikaze guitar. Look for it here in this block from Dokken.
Kind of been going in chronological order between us. You know, we're talking about our journey and metal journey and stuff. I think at some point, you know, we went from like hard rock to heavy metal. You get to like the real heavy metal, and you know, you're listening to Metallica and Megadeth and the big four you're listening
Yep.
to. And then you kind of expand beyond the big four locally, the Bay Area bands and stuff like that. You're realizing there's more of a scene out there. Again, I'm 15 years old, starting to buy magazines, buying heavy metal magazines and reading reviews, and things just pique your interest for whatever reason. And we keep bringing up his name. If he watches this, shout out Brian. But like, I remember him and I talking. We were having a conversation before we met you, like the Saturday or the Friday, whatever, like right before Headbangers Ball was going to air. We were talking to each other and we're like, dude, did you hear about this band called like Creator? We were both like, yeah, I want to hear what they sound like. We were like, our interest was really piqued. We knew that they were a band from Germany, but that was like it. I think that was all we really knew. So we're talking Extreme Aggression here, and they played Betrayer that
Yes.
night. And I had never heard anything like that in my life.
I
And
can
and
almost
they
guarantee that if that was the first time that you saw Betrayer, that was the first time I saw Betrayer. We
Yeah,
probably watched it at the exact same time.
it was like the best thing I had ever seen in my life. I saw that video, and what that did, and why this is such a significant album for me, and I've talked about it with you before, is I feel that it really opened up my mind to the concepts that there was like the scenes throughout the world, and it made metal global to me. Creator, and I'll be honest with you, this is not my favorite Creator album. Do love the record, but I love their earlier stuff more for sure. We went out like however it was pretty quickly, and I remember buying this cassette like almost right away when
Yeah.
we got this, and I listened to it, and I know every note. This is another one of those. I know every word to this album. I know every note to this album. I think if my problem with this album in retrospect is that maybe it was just kind of the production
Definitely sounded
compared to the
way
old
different.
stuff, but super clean sounding.
Very clean.
And I think this is definitely a different sounding album than their other ones. And like I said, I probably like the other ones more. I don't want to disparage it. This is a great record. Like it was a big gateway for us to learn that there was this crazy world of European metal out there. Still to this day, if I watch the video for Betrayer, I get goosebumps.
Like I said, I saw that video. We probably saw the premiere the same night, if I remember. But my biggest issue, not really issue, but getting into that music, getting into Kreator, like as soon as I heard the music, I had already had music from, thrash bands like, Metallica, Megadeth, and things like that. And I had another album from another band that I'm going to show next. My biggest issue with Kreator was Milla's vocals. I mean, that was hard for me to get through. I was like, what? I was like, this music is amazing. And Betrayer was such a great song. And it was so much faster. And, it just had an aggression to it that I hadn't, heard from some other bands from the Bay Area. And it did sound different. But Milla's vocals is what made it sound really unique. And I really had to think about buying that album before I bought it, because I remember listening to, I remember, because, music, it's interesting for us, like music was visual because there was a lot of videos for a lot of bands. And watching them play the song, I was like, okay, I get this. I can watch the song. But then I was like, can I close my eyes? Can I really listen to this song with those vocals? And I think I ended up breaking down and buying that album. And like you said, I love it. And I'm just so glad it really did open up our world. I'm pretty sure I had that album before I met you guys too. It might have been one of the few heavier albums that I had at the time.
For me, at this point in my life, if I was going to I want to listen to Kreator, I'm going to listen to either Pleasure to Kill or Terrible Certainty is probably.
And I probably would too, just because those, I don't want to say I've worn out ᴑᴜᴜ, but I've listened to it a billion times.
There is that aspect to it. Like there are those albums where it's like, I don't need to hear this again.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. All right, so now we're getting into some of the heavier stuff that we were listening to back in the late 80s. I think we all probably started with, Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, some Iron Maiden, Motley Crue, things like that. We just did a jump to Extreme Aggression, but I'm going to go back, like you said, just a little bit, just a smidge, and talk a little bit about another band that I saw on Headbangers Ball. And from this album, the video for this song, which I'll probably play because, it's just so significant of a video and of a song. And that is Testament, The New Order. Now, this album when like we were talking about Extreme Aggression, you know, how when I saw Betrayer come on and I was like, this music is amazing. It was probably because I already had, you know, Metallica, Testament, and a few other bands similar to that, but, you know, they weren't as aggressive. And I would say that Testament is more of, you know, they're definitely a thrash metal band. They're definitely aggressive, but I think Extreme Aggressions and Creator, Destruction, those types of bands just ticked it up a notch or two, you know, of these guys as far as heaviness, speed, vocals for sure. Chuck Billy does have gruff vocals, but he's still more clean than he is gruff, where Milla is just like, you know, as a singer, Milla is awful, you know, like really, you know, compared to other singers, you know, in heavy metal, he's, you know, good and fine and acceptable. But the song that I heard was a Trial by Fire, and I saw that video on MTV. Adam Curry, you know, announced it, said, you know, new album, new song, Trial by Fire, or maybe it had been on before. You know, this might have been only the first few times I had watched Headbangers Ball. I'm not sure. But yeah, Trial by Fire came on, and, you know, it starts off slow, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then it just kicks into that riff, and then they're jumping around in the dust, playing the guitar. And it's just like, you know, I was just like, this is so freaking cool. It really, like you said, how Creator opened your mind to the world. Well, before that, this opened up our minds to beyond Metallica and Megadeth. You know, like there are other bands out there. There's a lot of bands that are in this scene.
I feel like this is one of the first bands that we ever heard that there was a Bay Area scene.
Exactly.
Like I feel like this was the gateway to us knowing that San Francisco was a scene.
Exactly. And, you know, Violence came not too far after this, you know, a few other albums like that. But yeah, Testament was huge for me. And it was discovering it on my own as well, not having the influence of you guys yet, falling in love with bands like this that sound like Metallica, but are not Metallica, but are in that same metallic sound, you know, that guitar tone, the riffs, you know, like I mentioned in the Iron Maiden video, when I went to that Girls concert and I heard the opening thing for Battery, you know, I'm like, it's similar, you know, Trial by Fire is very similar, you know, it has that slow acoustic part at the beginning, and then all of a sudden it just rips, and you're just like, what the heck just happened? And it's heavy all the way through after that, and it's just so good. And I think this album is still solidly consistent. This is a tight, maybe 35-40 minute record. It's so good. The only thing that I would say is maybe a flaw on this record, and we were talking about this with Creator, is the production. And I think before Extreme Aggression, obviously Practice What You Preach after this, in 1988, they were still trying to figure out, you know, how to record thrash metal, you know, this heavy of stuff in the studio. And I think that's why the production on those Creator albums, as cool as it sounds, as that sound is, it's awful production, you know, as far as anybody's, you know, standards would be. Like, it wasn't recorded properly. I would say that album, I think in particular, New Order, I think a lot of people like us and me, you know, that probably was their first experience with Testament. But yeah, I have really fond memories of that, and getting into, like I said, discovering that there was more than Metallica and Megadeth out there playing very similar styles of music, and then hunting for it was what was the goal.